exactly what that's God. So talking about family, and I don't care that we're and I wouldn't the best church I've ever been in, but I would not trade today. Fear and faithfulness. A guy named Johnson Oatman, nothing like having a last name. Johnson Oatman, he was raised in the hundreds, the early 19th, and his father, famous, and Johnson grew up in a church that was just, and it had a real life. Um, Left this legacy. He became a Methodist Bible case. But anyway, in amongst him, minister and Bible, wrote over 5,000 hymns. Many of them today, so many I know the authors on me for not even looking. But count your blessings. Wrote this, but he others spent all blessing and teach, and this classic, and it reminds us that we forget. Walked in today, we had a car to drive, we had our car had gas in it, got here, air to breathe, light. I mean, we down and out in our blessing. But he based the song on Read 7, but especially 1. So, oh, that men would give thanks to Yahweh for and his oh that and believe it or not, what led me to get from Esther's Hadassah, and we talked in Bible study on people and some of them have a couple different, but Hadassah, but she was also called Esther. Happened to be Hadassah and her cousin raised in Persia around 500. Her cousin Mordecai had been taken to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar, and probably time raised up, and then mother died. That was adopted. So he raised her after his died, and raised her honor the uh, but into Persia. Babylon had 580. Babylon fell a few decades. Babylon fell, and so that's where we find ourselves in Persia. In fact, in the citadel of, as it's called, the king of Persia at the time was, and Xerxes all this banished Vashti, and then he realized what he'd done. Like he banished his. So, yeah. So in the book of Esther, I'm going to start at chapter 1 through. So this is Xerxes, probably. So this after he up as a starting in later when King Henry had decided, remembered Vashti and what she had done. No, done. But after he remembered Vashti, what she had done, and at what he had decreed, then the king personally let a search be young virgin for the king sponge. Let the king appoint commissioners in every province of the realm to bring all these into the harem at let them be placed under the guy in charge of the let be. Then let the young woman who this advice of long story short, Esther up as worse, eventually not we would be talking about. So she eventually now there was another guy in his name, and for whatever reason, but he especially, and when Mordecai wouldn't bow down to him, he decided that not he wasn't just going to get rid of Mordecai, all the Jews. So he plotted, not the king, that in I forget what it is, going to have everybody kill all the Jews. Like, sure, why not? So in the 12th month, on the 13th day of the month, everybody could rise up and kill their Jews. So yeah, he plotted to kill the Jews. And long story, come back around. Esther saved her people, and they eventually established the holiday Purim, which they still celebrate, and they celebrated around the kind of move, and so it's somewhere around March. Celebrate. So there are two lessons, which I just read, and most probably otherwise I am lessons that I want you. And these lessons are just no way to separate because they're the first one that shaped having a godly cousin, he was obviously, and he godly following, but not just be like an automaton following the cause. He was, and as we story of it, and he what she does that godly and no wish young girl that young young and up and we it doesn't happen often, but it did happen to Esther, and but she of what her by her father did. Family also helped from her harem. A lot of other women taught how to be beautiful, and then possibly like you, all that stuff that goes, all that we will. But anyway, but we looked at I walking around out asking how is she and that helped and us, because obviously all of this, and that's that God. Now, when the bad troubles plot to kill the Jews, Esther was ready. But more, and this, when the plot found out, Esther, and she fellow Jews, what Mordecai said, I answered Esther, do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews. For if you remain silent, then release and deliver cries. But you and your father's family, and who knows but that you know she and her the backing right there, instructing, and her not only but all the Jews, all not only provinces. Going back to Johnson, Esther mentally had learned how to count blessings. Esther, number one. Now, did you know this? Is probably the older people possibly that the name God, God, not mentioned. That was why in the early days, them trying to decide which time, and that's why Esther was God, the God. So, and that's leading around back to God working redemption of Persia, or they, God has always what He did 1,500 has been working. That's the, there's things that you're going to hit a week from now, a year from now, 10 that God's haven't come to them because He's outside. You're stuck inside a time, walking the line of God can. What's coming up for you now? Esther. This is why these books are in the Bible that apply. There are a few that were especially God has working in the background. Song, working. Esther, how it up for Xerxes had thrown his party, got a little too drunk, demanded that Vashti come and display herself, and she said no, and he banished her because she wouldn't obey, and then none of the women. Vashti got away with it, right? So he banished her, and that led to Esther's appointment as queen long before anybody knew that Haman was going to do what Haman. And God had given as a imagine. I can her and Mordecai wish, but if they were in Israel and the Jews, God had, they may not have enjoyed living, wished, for whatever reason. God cares plans for us that we don't all out. Never have to nothing. God's control. Everything that comes. God has a may not like the and if he's not necessarily to times we'd rather be God would rather. That's the question. Every now and up until we walk out the door, never have God has because if we then there's something happens, might even chuckle and God. It's kind of like, all right, God, what are you trying to tell me? Because that's how it ought to be. Every part of our life, God, what about this? Hey, God, I don't have enough money to pay. How to pay for God? Show out for God over and all day long. All right, God, what's this? God, what's that? There should not be our life because everything not leave out. We have an actual family. Oh, lots of they're died or they're out or person, all the other, and they're left. Nobody has. Philippians 1:27 and says, "Whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of God. Then, whether I come to see about you in my absence, I know that you are one spirit, striving together as one gospel, without being frightened by those. This is a sign to them that but you power you." And then I know that things happen and there's drama and all. happen. Trauma. What do we need? Practice the way of thinking. Don't already. Many of us practice, and often practice it, and then we habit of practicing the way of trusting that God's got all my steps laid out. Worry and I've had just need to have a habit of worrying about things. Try to start habit will long before the old of that, and I know that God's got us covered. So coming back to one about family, Esther had strong family right. What about all the are we much easier? But unbelievers, they're all alone, and that's scary. And we part of our homeless and substance are caused. Uh, there is a they are out to destroy the family, and what do we have to show for it? Substance mess out there, and people don't realize that people are purposely trying to do. So when we unbelieve or they've out or find them biological, matter what's going on in there. Talked about this. Satan can destroy you from the outside. That's what he. Satan from the outside, aware of his. Paul said, I'm aware. Eyes offer lost word. Coming around to this other, second, God is bigger. God is bigger. God is bigger than all of their problems. God is bigger than all of their important that outside I'm going to head here.